Today, we're going to be speaking with Senator Brian Schatz, Democratic Senator representing Hawaii. Senator, so good to have you on. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to pick something specific to dive into with regard to this tax bill that's on the table and help my audience understand something like a work requirement for some of these programs, which maybe at the surface level sounds sort of inoffensive. Listen, if you're able to work, what's so bad about a work requirement? Can you talk about what's really kind of pernicious and insidious about that?
Yeah, it's just it's cutting the program, right? And they've tried this in other states, Republican states, and repealed it because it turns out it's more expensive to administer a work requirement than it is to just provide the benefit. Most people receiving public assistance, whether that's, nutritional assistance or Medicaid, are working, right? But they're also very busy, and putting in these onerous paperwork requirements is intended to throw people off of their health care because they don't submit a form on time. Like, you lose your health care if you don't submit a form on time. And there are already examples of this happening. The other thing is, you don't have to take my word for it. The reason that the Republicans are projecting a huge sort of inflow of cash to the United States government as a result of these Medicaid provisions is because they anticipate that up to 16 million people are going to lose their health care. It's
Right.
not 16 million undocumented individuals. They're not all on Medicaid. Come on. And so I think it's important to take a half a second to explain why this is BS, but not indulge in this kind of back and forth about work requirements. Everybody knows what this is. And by the way, they tried to do a similar thing on FEMA and disaster response. They said, only Americans should receive disaster relief. Okay, the kind of thing that sounds good until you realize after the Lahaina wildfire, after a hurricane, after a flood or an earthquake or whatever it is, people don't have their damn IDs on them, right? And so those kind of like administrative burdens that we put on stuff, it sort of sounds good. And then once you start to operate it, everybody gets furious about all the paperwork requirements.
You know, one of the things that seems true no matter what program you study is that it generally seems simpler just to provide a benefit than to go through the bureaucracy and expense of what is often proposed by Republicans. I mean, when we zoom out, we've done studies, for example, in Utah on homeless veterans. What does it cost to just give them housing, give them health care, and make sure that they're fed? And it's cheaper than all of these individual programs with their own rubrics, barometers, and sort of overarching administrative infrastructure. And so what that really reinforces for me, and I'm curious what you see in conversations with your colleagues on the other side of the aisle, is that this is fundamentally not really about money. It's about morality and what George Lakoff called strict father morality, that on some deep visceral level, they just don't think people have earned some of the stuff that these programs provide. And you can show them that it's cheaper till you're blue in the face. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really seem to be about that, does it?
Yeah, I think they think help makes you lazy,
Right.
right? I think I don't say all of them. Some of them are just, we'll do whatever Donald Trump says. Some of them are intentionally kind of in a fantasy land and want their tax cuts, and they understand how much this is going to hurt people, but they just don't care that much. But there are people for whom, they don't believe if they've done well that they were fortunate. They may have worked hard, but they have to understand that to do well is also to be a little lucky, right? No major illness befell you. You grew up in a community that gave you a chance. Like, there's just always luck involved in life, bad luck and good luck.
Yeah.
And I used to talk to Sherrod Brown about this, and he said, Republicans just underestimate hard luck as a factor in people's lives. But to your point, it is this fundamental view that, if you give a person $6 a day, $6 a day for nutritional assistance, that somehow they're going to be unmotivated to make their life better. And the truth is, the average person on SNAP only spends about a year on SNAP, the average child on SNAP. And so it's not like you're creating this long-term dependency. You're just helping people when they need it the most.
Last question on the bill, and then I want to talk to you about this weekend a little bit. My expectation has been that it would be too much of a visible failure to not pass anything in the Senate. And so, given that people like Rand Paul are saying, well, if you just take the debt limit increase out, I'd vote for it, that there's sort of this soft opposition or hesitancy from some of your Republican colleagues. I'm assuming it will ultimately pass, but in a slightly different form. What's your assessment right now?
I don't know. And I'm sort of trying to resist the temptation I have to like be a part-time pundit, right? I'm in the
Yep.
arena and it's like this is the arena where I'm supposed to like come out at halftime and then turn like, it's like Draymond Green, the basketball player who's like an actual high quality NBA basketball player and podcaster about the NBA. I don't want
Right.
to be that guy. I'm in the arena. I don't know the percentage likelihood. Here's my theory of change here. We should try to kill the bill because I think there's a chance that we can kill the bill. And I think if we do it right and maximize the likelihood that we can kill the bill, what that means is that we drove public opinion in our direction regarding the policy. And then even if they pass the bill, they now have a political anvil around their necks to carry for the next year and a half. And so
Mm,
whatever I think is likely to happen doesn't matter because our strategy is the same, which is this bill's super unpopular, and the more you know about it as as a general proposition, the more you hate it. That's the good news. People are about 2-1 against it. The bad news is that about a third of the public is not aware of the bill. And
right.
so our job collectively is to not allow Donald Trump to distract us from, the picking of the pockets of the regular person across the country with what's going to happen with the National Guard this weekend, with whatever crazy stuff he's going to tweet. And it's not that we shouldn't respond, or it's not that we should be overly chill and always, quote unquote, pivot to kitchen table issues. Like we've got to fight the fight. I've done so on USAID, which I understand like is not necessarily the first thing that someone running for reelection or to be newly elected is going to run on. That doesn't mean it's not important. So I'm not telling people not to fight on the things that matter to them. I am saying here is this thing that is massively important from a policy standpoint in terms of a wealth transfer from struggling people to people who are wealthier than anyone who's ever walked the planet. It also happens to unite the Democratic coalition, so we're not fighting amongst ourselves. And it happens also, we're on the very popular side of this with independent voters. And so for the next 6 weeks or until this bill succeeds or fails, I would like everybody, for every tweet or Substack or verbalization of here's the path for the Democrats going forward, I want them to do 3 tweets or Substacks about this bill.
Mm.
Everybody owes it to the country to talk about this bill and to make sure that 95 or 98% of the public is aware of it, because if that happens, I think we'll win the battle.
In the few minutes we have left this weekend, I was just reviewing with my audience video of tanks rolling in the streets last night of Washington, D.C. We've got this parade on Saturday. Happens to be Donald Trump's birthday, also the 250th anniversary of the Army. The No Kings protests now are expected in more than 1,500 cities across the country. I assume and hope that they are going to be peaceful. Does this feel like a potential inflection point where we are right now? Or is there too much kind of hope being wrapped up in this weekend, these protests, and this moment?
I don't know if it's an inflection point. The way I view this thing is like just chip away, just chip away, just chip away. I used to have there's a political operative in Hawaii who sort of jokingly used to say everything is worth 2%. And he said if you're short, that's minus 2%. If your name's easy to pronounce, plus 2%. If you walked house to house more than the other guy, that's 2%. And it was Hawaii, so 2% was considered, not a lot. So we're talking about 0.1%. But my point is everything matters, but there is no like, if we do X, then that unlocks democracy going forward, or that unlocks popularity going forward. This is a long-term project to build a pluralistic, peaceful movement on behalf of democratic values. I think Saturday will be important, but it's not either the beginning or the end of the movement. The one thing I'd say, just to encourage everybody, is let's police ourselves, right? Let's make sure that we use peaceful means, but also that we communicate within whatever crowd you're in, whether it's 75 people or 7,500, like what the expectations are, because there are a bunch of people who will hijack any political protest just to be, shit disturbers, right? Just to light a trash can on fire and
Yep.
be anarchist. And those people do not belong in our movement, right? We can have a variety of views, including views, that I don't agree with on the center left, center right, leftist. Like, that's not what I'm saying, is that
Yep.
people with differing views are not welcome. Everyone's welcome, but the behavior matters. And if you are going to stand up for the rule of law, it is very, very helpful to be lawful in doing that. And the best way, and I'm not some expert in civil disobedience and organized protest, but I certainly know this, the best way is for us to police ourselves. And if someone starts to act like a jackass, to call them out and say, cut it out. That's not what we're doing here.
Very well said. We've been speaking with Democratic Senator from Hawaii, Brian Schatz. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you.